Love Beyond the Mirror is a work of inspirational fiction created for entertainment, educational, and storytelling purposes. The characters, events, conversations, relationships, and situations portrayed in this story are fictional and are the product of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or deceased, is purely coincidental and unintended.
As a breast cancer survivor, I try to create videos that inspire, encourage, and add value to your life. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel.
Staying Healthy Together. Kenji and DeAnn's journey of wellness, love, and intentional living. A Love Beyond the Mirror story. For Kenji and DeAnn, growing older together wasn't simply about adding years to their lives. It was about doing what they could to add life to their years. They had already discovered that love could arrive at any age. Now they were discovering something equally important. When two people genuinely care about one another, they begin caring about the quality of life they're building together. Their approach wasn't about chasing perfection. It wasn't about trying to look 20 years younger. And it certainly wasn't about spending every waking moment counting calories or worrying about the number on a scale. For them, staying healthy became another expression of love. It meant being intentional about what they ate, how they moved, how they rested, and how they cared for themselves and one another. They wanted enough energy for their Tuesday adventures. They wanted to travel. They wanted to walk through museums, explore new cities, enjoy the beach, dance when the music moved them, spend time with their families, and continue creating memories together. Most importantly, they wanted to be good stewards of the lives God had given them. So they made a decision. They would pursue wellness together.
How about salmon and broccoli?
Perfect. Add it to the list.
And we'll need garlic.
Got it.
It started with a plan. Sunday afternoons gradually became planning time in Kenji and DeAnn's home. Sometimes they sat at the kitchen table with notebooks. Other times they relaxed on the sofa with their phones, looking for interesting recipes. The question was never simply, what are we going to eat? Instead, they asked, what can we prepare this week that is healthy, delicious, and realistic? They quickly learned that healthy eating didn't have to mean boring eating. They planned breakfasts, lunches, dinners, snacks, and occasionally fresh juices. They made their grocery list before going shopping so they wouldn't wander through the store filling their cart with whatever caught their attention. Vegetables, fresh fruit, leafy greens, beans and lentils, nuts and seeds, avocados, whole grains in reasonable portions, healthy proteins, herbs, spices, and plenty of water. Planning ahead also helped them avoid one of the biggest challenges people face when trying to eat healthier: waiting until they were hungry to decide what to eat. Kenji would laugh and say that hunger was a terrible meal planner. DeAnn agreed, so they prepared before hunger had an opportunity to make the decisions for them.
These peppers look so fresh.
Perfect. Let's get it.
And some of this kale.
Their grocery shopping became part of the adventure. Even grocery shopping became something they enjoyed doing together. They spent more time around the outside sections of the grocery store where many of the fresh foods were located. DeAnn enjoyed choosing colorful vegetables: red bell peppers, green spinach, purple cabbage, orange carrots, fresh cucumbers, tomatoes, broccoli, cauliflower. Kenji sometimes teased her because she wanted their grocery cart to look like a rainbow. But there was wisdom behind it. Different fruits and vegetables offered different nutrients, textures, and flavors. They weren't trying to eliminate everything they enjoyed. Instead, they were learning to make healthier foods the foundation of their meals. They also became label readers. They looked at serving sizes, carbohydrates, added sugars, sodium, fiber, and ingredients. Sometimes something advertised as healthy didn't look quite so healthy once they turned the package around. That became another lesson. Don't simply trust the front of the package. Turn it around and see what's actually inside.
This celery is going in great.
Perfect. Let me try it.
Fresh and vibrant.
Delicious.
Juicing together. One of their favorite experiments was juicing. The first time they pulled out the juicer, their kitchen looked more like a produce market than a kitchen. Celery covered one side of the counter. Carrots were stacked near the sink. There were cucumbers, lemons, ginger, apples, leafy greens, and beets. Kenji looked around the kitchen and joked, "Are we making juice or opening a farmer's market?" DeAnn laughed. "Just start washing the vegetables." Soon they were experimenting. One combination included cucumber, celery, lemon, ginger, and a small amount of green apple. Another used carrots, ginger, lemon, and cucumber. They experimented with leafy greens as well. Some combinations were delicious, others required a little adjustment, and a few experiments quietly disappeared from the recipe list forever. But that was part of the fun. They learned that juicing could be one way to enjoy vegetables and fruit, but they didn't treat juice as a miracle solution or a replacement for balanced meals. Whole fruits and vegetables remained important because they contained fiber that could be reduced when produce was juiced. So sometimes they juiced, other times they made smoothies that retained more of the whole fruit or vegetable. And sometimes they simply ate the produce exactly as God created it. They also became mindful of how much fruit they put into their juices. A glass containing several apples, oranges, and other sweet fruits could contain far more natural sugar than they realized. So vegetables usually became the foundation of their juices, with smaller amounts of fruit added for flavor. Their philosophy was simple: juicing was a tool, not the entire toolbox. Their low-carb days. Other days, Kenji and DeAnn preferred lower carbohydrate meals. Again, they didn't turn eating into an extreme set of rules. They simply became more conscious of portions and food choices. Breakfast might include eggs with spinach, mushrooms, and avocado. Lunch could be grilled chicken over a large salad filled with cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, greens, and a modest amount of dressing. Dinner might feature baked salmon with roasted broccoli and cauliflower. Sometimes they replaced traditional pasta with zucchini noodles. Instead of mashed potatoes, they might try mashed cauliflower. Large sandwich rolls could occasionally be replaced with lettuce wraps. They learned that reducing carbohydrates didn't necessarily mean eliminating them entirely. It meant becoming more selective. When they did eat carbohydrates, they often chose foods that offered nutritional value and fiber rather than relying heavily on refined breads, sweets, sugary drinks, pastries, and oversized portions. And they gave themselves permission to enjoy occasional favorite foods. Because they weren't trying to create a temporary diet. They were trying to build a lifestyle they could actually maintain.
These peppers are looking so vibrant.
They'll add great color. Smells amazing.
Here come the veggies.
Perfect. It's coming together.
Teamwork makes it fun.
Discovering vegan meals. Another part of their wellness journey involved experimenting with vegan meals. They didn't approach it as a competition or with rigid rules. Instead, they began incorporating more plant-based meals into their week. One evening they prepared black bean and vegetable bowls. Another evening they made lentil soup filled with tomatoes, celery, carrots, onions, garlic, and herbs. They experimented with chickpea salads, roasted vegetables, vegetable stir-fries, bean chili, stuffed bell peppers, cauliflower dishes, mushrooms seasoned with garlic and herbs, and large salads that were substantial enough to actually feel like meals. Kenji became surprisingly good at preparing vegetable stir-fries. He would heat the pan, add colorful vegetables, season everything carefully, and proudly announce, "Dinner is served." DeAnn would inspect the plate. "Where did all these vegetables come from?" "The refrigerator," he would answer. She would shake her head and laugh. Their plant-based meals taught them an important lesson. A meal didn't always have to revolve around meat. Beans, lentils, tofu, whole grains, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and other plant foods could create satisfying meals when prepared thoughtfully. They also understood that simply calling something vegan didn't automatically make it healthy. French fries could be vegan. Sugary desserts could be vegan. Highly processed foods could be vegan. So they focused primarily on whole and minimally processed foods rather than labels alone. Their kitchen wasn't a place of deprivation. Perhaps one of their greatest discoveries was that healthy living became easier when they stopped thinking about everything they couldn't have. Instead, they focused on everything they could enjoy. Fresh vegetables seasoned beautifully, colorful salads, soups, grilled foods, fresh fruit, healthy fats, herbs, spices, homemade dressings, plant-based meals, lower carbohydrate alternatives, fresh juices, smoothies, and occasionally a treasured favorite simply because life was also meant to be enjoyed. They weren't trying to create a kitchen filled with restrictions. They were creating a kitchen filled with better choices.
I love walking with you.
Me too. It's good for us.
Every step for our love.
Walking together. Exercise became another shared commitment. Walking was one of their favorites because it required very little equipment and gave them time together. Some mornings they walked through their neighborhood. Other times they chose a park. And sometimes walking became part of their adventures. Instead of searching for the closest parking space, they occasionally parked farther away and walked. At museums, they took the stairs when it was reasonable. At shopping centers, they walked an extra lap before leaving. If the weather wasn't cooperative, they found ways to move indoors. But their walks became more than exercise. They talked, they dreamed, they planned, they laughed, they prayed. Sometimes they walked quietly, simply enjoying each other's company. Movement strengthened their bodies. Conversation strengthened their relationship.
Keep pushing.
You got this.
Strength training. They also understood that as people age, maintaining strength becomes increasingly important. So they incorporated simple resistance exercises appropriate for their individual abilities. Light weights, resistance bands, chair exercises, wall push-ups, leg movements, gentle squats when appropriate, balance exercises. Their goal wasn't to become bodybuilders. Their goal was to remain capable, strong enough to carry groceries, strong enough to climb stairs, strong enough to get up from a chair comfortably, strong enough to travel, strong enough to keep participating in life. Kenji liked keeping track of their progress. DeAnn preferred celebrating progress. If Kenji said, "We did 12 repetitions last week and 15 today," DeAnn might respond, "Then 15 deserves a celebration." And somehow, even exercise became another reason to smile. Stretching, balance, and gentle movement. They also discovered the importance of flexibility and balance. Some mornings they spent several minutes stretching. They practiced slow, controlled movements. They worked on posture. They incorporated gentle balance exercises while making sure they had something stable nearby when needed. They even experimented with Tai Chi-inspired movements. Slow steps, controlled breathing, gentle shifting of weight, relaxed shoulders, intentional movement. There was something peaceful about exercising without rushing. It reminded them that wellness wasn't always about moving faster. Sometimes it was about moving better.
To our health.
And to us.
I love this.
Water became their everyday drink. Another simple change made a big difference. They drank more water. They kept reusable water bottles nearby. One stayed in the kitchen. Another traveled in the car. And when they exercised or spent time outdoors, water came with them. Sometimes DeAnn added lemon, cucumber, mint, or berries to give the water a little flavor. Kenji preferred his plain and cold. They still enjoyed other beverages occasionally, but water became their everyday choice. They discovered something important about wellness: not every healthy decision has to be dramatic. Sometimes the most powerful changes are the simple things you consistently repeat.
Dancing makes everything better.
Absolutely. Let's dance and cook.
Best kitchen dance ever.
# dancing counts too. Not all their exercise looked like exercise. Sometimes music started playing in the kitchen. Kenji would reach for DeAnn's hand. And suddenly meal preparation became dance practice. They weren't worried about perfect steps. They simply moved, sometimes slowly, sometimes playfully, sometimes laughing so hard they had to stop. Those moments reminded them that physical activity didn't have to feel like punishment. Movement could be joyful, it could be romantic, it could be spontaneous, and it could become another memory. Meal preparation day. Once they became serious about planning, meal preparation changed everything. 1 or 2 days each week, they prepared several foods in advance. They washed vegetables, cut peppers, prepared salads, cooked beans, roasted vegetables, prepared healthy proteins, portioned nuts, washed fruit, and stored ingredients so meals could be assembled quickly. Sometimes they prepared complete meals. Other times they simply prepared ingredients. That way, when Tuesday Adventure Day arrived, they weren't forced to choose between enjoying their adventure and staying committed to healthy eating. They could take healthy snacks with them. A small container of nuts, fresh vegetables, fruit, water, or a meal they had prepared earlier. Planning gave them freedom.
So peaceful.
It is just perfect.
Rest was part of wellness too. Eventually, Kenji and DeAnn learned another lesson. Rest wasn't laziness. Their bodies needed recovery. They didn't have to exercise intensely every day. Some days were walking days. Some were strength days. Some were adventure days. And some were simply rest days. They also worked on maintaining healthy sleep routines. They tried not to stay awake unnecessarily late. They reduced distractions before bedtime. And when their bodies told them they needed rest, they learned to listen. Wellness wasn't about
This
constantly
is
pushing.
really nice.
It was about
It
learning when
is.
to move
The
and
food
when
is
to recover.
wonderful.
I'm glad we did this.
Eating out without abandoning their goals. Kenji and DeAnn loved going out. Healthy living wasn't going to change that. Instead, they learned how to make thoughtful restaurant choices. Sometimes they checked menus before leaving home. They looked for grilled, roasted, steamed, or baked dishes. They ordered vegetables as sides. They sometimes shared larger portions. Sauces and dressings could be requested on the side. And if they wanted dessert, sometimes they shared one. There was no guilt, no dramatic declaration that they had ruined everything. One meal didn't determine their lifestyle. Their consistent habits did. That understanding gave them balance. Health appointments were part of the plan. Kenji and DeAnn also understood that healthy living involved more than food and exercise. They kept up with appropriate medical appointments and preventive care. They asked questions. They paid attention to changes in their bodies. They understood that nutrition and exercise were important, but neither replaced professional health care. Growing older didn't mean becoming fearful about health. It meant becoming more intentional about it. Spiritual wellness. But there was one dimension of health Kenji and DeAnn considered foundational. Their spiritual health. At the end of their days, after adventures, meals, conversations, and laughter, they returned to the practice that had become central to their relationship. Prayer, scripture, gratitude. Sometimes they prayed about their families. Sometimes their future. Sometimes their health. And sometimes they simply thanked God for another ordinary day together. They understood that human beings were more than bodies. There was physical wellness, emotional wellness, relational wellness, and spiritual wellness. They wanted to nurture all of it. One scripture especially reflected their desire. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. 3 John chapter 1 verse 2. For them, wellness wasn't worshiping the body. It was stewardship. Their bodies allowed them to serve, travel, love, give, create, worship, help others, spend time with family, and experience the life God had given them. Over time, something beautiful happened. Healthy living stopped feeling like a project. It simply became part of who they were together. Sunday meal planning, grocery shopping, fresh juices, vegan dinners, low-carb meals, morning walks, strength exercises, stretching, dancing in the kitchen, drinking water, resting, praying, laughing, encouraging one another. None of these things seemed extraordinary by themselves. But together they formed a lifestyle. And perhaps that was the greatest lesson Kenji and DeAnn learned. A healthy life usually isn't built through one enormous decision. It is built through hundreds of small decisions repeated over time. One healthy breakfast, one walk, one glass of water, one grocery list, one homemade meal, one good night's sleep, one prayer, then another, and another, until eventually those choices
Lord, align
become
our
habits,
hearts with your
and
will
those habits become
And
a way
lift
of
our
life.
prayers together.
Their kitchen wasn't a place of deprivation. Perhaps one of their greatest discoveries was that healthy living became easier when they stopped thinking about everything they couldn't have. Instead, they focused on everything they could enjoy. Fresh vegetables seasoned beautifully, colorful salads, soups, grilled foods, fresh fruit, healthy fats, herbs, spices, homemade dressings, plant-based meals, lower carbohydrate alternatives, fresh juices, smoothies, and occasionally a treasured favorite simply because life was also meant to be enjoyed. They weren't trying to create a kitchen filled with restrictions. They were creating a kitchen filled with better choices. They learned to give each other grace. Of course, they weren't perfect. There were days when the meal plan changed. There were celebrations, birthdays, family gatherings, vacations, Tuesday adventures that ended at restaurants they hadn't planned to visit. And occasionally one of them simply wanted something that wasn't on the healthy eating plan. They learned not to police each other's plates. That mattered. Instead of saying, you shouldn't eat that, they encouraged one another through their own choices. If one had an off day, the other didn't criticize. Tomorrow was another opportunity. They weren't trying to become each other's food supervisor. They were partners. As another day came to an end, Kenji and DeAnn sat together watching the sun slowly disappear beneath the horizon. The sky glowed with shades of gold and orange. They had walked that morning, prepared dinner together, laughed over another one of Kenji's kitchen experiments. And now they sat quietly beside one another. They understood something they hadn't fully appreciated when they were younger. Time was precious, health was precious, love was precious, and none of them should be taken for granted. They couldn't control every circumstance. They couldn't guarantee tomorrow, and no healthy lifestyle could promise that sickness would never come. But they could make thoughtful choices today. They could nourish their bodies, move according to their abilities, rest when they needed rest, care for their spiritual lives, encourage one another, and remain grateful for the life they had been given. DeAnn looked toward the fading sunlight. Another day was ending, but she smiled because she knew what the sunset represented. It wasn't simply an ending. It was a reminder that, God willing, another sunrise was coming. Another morning to walk together. Another meal to prepare. Another prayer to pray. Another adventure to experience. Another opportunity to love. And as the last light disappeared beyond the horizon, Kenji reached for DeAnn's hand. Their journey toward wellness wasn't about living forever. It was about living well for however many days God chose to give them. Together, with purpose, with gratitude, with faith, and with love, because for Kenji and DeAnn, staying healthy had become more than taking care of themselves. It had become another
Thank you for
beautiful way of
watching.
saying,
Don't forget to
I
like,
love you,
subscribe, and
I
hit that
value the life we've
notification
been
bell.
given,
Your
and I want
support
to
helps this
experience
channel
as
grow.
much of it with you as God allows. And tomorrow, when the sun rose again, their journey would continue. Love Beyond the Mirror is a work of inspirational fiction created for entertainment, educational, and storytelling purposes. The characters, events, conversations, relationships, and situations portrayed in this story are fictional and are the product of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or deceased, is purely coincidental and unintended. While the story explores universal themes of faith, love, family, healing, aging, resilience, forgiveness, and personal growth, it does not depict actual events or real-life individuals. Some images, voices, music, visual effects, and other creative elements used in this production may be AI-assisted or AI-generated. These materials are intended solely to enhance the storytelling experience and should not be interpreted as representations of actual people, events, or documented historical accounts. The views, opinions, and actions expressed by fictional characters within this story do not necessarily reflect those of the author, producer, narrator, or affiliated organizations. This video is presented as inspirational storytelling designed to encourage hope, compassion, faith, and meaningful human connection. Copyright DeAnn Volchez. All rights reserved. No portion of this work may be reproduced, distributed, transmitted, displayed, or used in any form without the prior written permission of the copyright holder, except as permitted by applicable copyright law. Thank you for supporting inspirational